Well, hello wherever you are. Welcome to another totally random video. And in today's video we're going to take a look at the Kenwood KX 880HX cassette deck. So I want to show you the various different features that this thing has, and I'm going to talk about a few differences between this cassette deck and another cassette deck that I used to have, and also the difference between this one and the KX 1100. So yeah, let's get into it. So this is a 2 tape head cassette deck, and there is also a Kenwood KX 880D out there, and the only difference between those two cassette decks is that this one has Dolby HX Pro. So yeah, that's like the only difference. As you can tell, we also have rec calibration, so we can calibrate the bias and the rec level, and I explain how that works and why you have to calibrate the rec level as well. It also has Dolby B and Dolby C noise reduction. We also have index, scan, blank search, MPX filter, which you only use if you want to record something from radio. We have left and right volume control and master rec level. And we also have a headphone output with a volume control, but it kind of sucks a little bit because even if I have the setting to minimum, it still is pretty darn loud. So yeah, it doesn't really work that well. Yeah, and it is a direct drive cassette recorder, which is also very nice and very neat. So how do you calibrate the bias on a cassette deck like this? Well, usually people recommend, if it's a 2 tape head cassette deck, that you record something on the cassette and you go through the various different bias settings, and then you digitize all these recordings and you compare them side by side in a program like Audacity with the original, and this way you know what bias setting you should use. But you know, that's like a pain in the ass to do it that way. So the way I do it, it might not be the most accurate method, but I just prefer doing it this way. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to rec pause mode. Of course, I'm going to adjust the volume, and I'm going to record something like 20 seconds of pink noise. So after that, I'm going to rewind the tape a little bit. Then I go into rec pause mode again and use my headphones, so this way I can hear the original once again, and then I just push play and I hear the recording, and this way I already know if and how much I have to calibrate and set or adjust the bias. That was a lot of words: calibrate, set, adjust. Yeah, how much I have to adjust the bias, and then I'm just going to do it once more to be really sure, and you know, that's all you need. So now let's talk about calibrating the rec level. So you probably wonder why you need to calibrate the rec level, because we have the master rec level right there. So if the recording is too quiet or too loud, you just assume that you might use the master rec level to adjust that, but that's not really what you want to do. You see, the thing is, you want the recording to be the same volume as the master rec level that you adjusted, but sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you adjust the master rec level to be, let's say, plus 4 decibel, but the recording turns out to be minus 2 decibel, for example. So that's when you use the rec level to adjust that. So the way how I calibrate the rec level is by recording 20 seconds of a sinus tone. So 20 seconds. So I'm always resetting the counter, so this way I know how far I have to rewind in order to be at the beginning. So both channels are now at plus 4 decibel, which is ideal for a Type 1 cassette. So if I rewind and play that, I can see, yes, everything is fine. Both channels are the same. Rec level is, or the recording has the same volume as the master rec level that I adjusted. So this way I know that I don't have to adjust anything. But if it would have been different, then I would have to adjust something. And that's how I do it. And that's fine for me. So yeah, you probably wonder what the difference is between this one and the 1100. Well, the difference is, first of all, the 1100 is a 3 tape head cassette deck. So that makes calibrating the bias and the rec level a little bit more easy because you also have a calibration mode. So in the calibration mode, it records a signal and it already measures the difference or the variation between the original and the recording, and it shows you the difference on the VU meter. So then you can adjust that while you are recording to be accurate. But the question is, how accurate is that measurement? I mean, if you have a tape that is very noisy, maybe it has a lot of tape hiss, maybe that could interfere with the measurement, and then it's not really that accurate again. So I much rather trust my own ears instead of some program, because if you remember correctly, I showed you a video where I used another Kenwood cassette deck that had a fully automatic bias calibration, and the problem was that this fully automatic bias calibration didn't work. The recording sounded worse after the calibration, and there were, unfortunately I found out about this after I already had this cassette deck, but as it turned out there were a few people on the internet complaining about the exact same problem. So yeah, a fully automatic bias calibration sounds convenient, but it sometimes doesn't really work. So yeah, this fully manual bias calibration might be a little pain in the ass, but it also might be a little bit more accurate because you can trust your own ears and you don't rely on some software to set and calibrate and measure everything. But if you happen to have some older cassettes from the 70s or 80s when this tape deck came out, I believe it came out somewhere around 87 or 88, something like that. And in the original manual, they give you a list of various different cassettes and how you have to adjust the bias and the rec level for those cassettes. So that's very neat. I don't know how accurate it really is, if you can really trust that list, but it's really neat that they give you this little list. And as you can see on this list, for some reason all the Kenwood cassettes seem to be the only ones that don't require any calibration whatsoever. No matter if it's Type 1, Type 2 or Type 4, the Kenwood cassettes are always the one that don't need any calibration. It could also be just a clever marketing trick so that people think, ooh, I don't have to calibrate anything if I just buy Kenwood cassettes. So now let's take a look at the various different features that this cassette deck has. So for example, we also have the feature that is called DPSS. That stands for Direct Program Search System. So this means that you can use the cassette similar to a CD, where you can skip between tracks, or you can create a playlist or something like this. But this only works if you have a blank portion or a silent part of at least 4 seconds between each song. And sometimes it also doesn't really work if it's a very loud cassette with a lot of tape hiss, so it doesn't really detect those 4 seconds. So if you record, for example, a Type 1 cassette, it's always wise to record with the Dolby noise reduction activated, so this way you don't have any problems. So let's say we have a cassette. Let's not use this one, let's just use this one. But this cassette doesn't even has those 4 seconds, but I'm just going to demonstrate something a little bit. So if I want to create a playlist, I have to play something, and then I have to push the fast forward button as many times as I want the next track. So if I want the next track to be track 4, I have to push it, I believe, 4 times. So now it's track 2, track 4, and so on and so on. So then we can create a playlist this way of maximum 16 tracks. I mean, it's very unlikely that you have 16 tracks on one side of a cassette, but if you have, then you can create a playlist like that. And also, if you are at the end of the cassette, you can also use the rewind button and work your way backwards. So it works the same way like that. Then we also have the ability to replay the current track over and over again. So if we want to do that, you just push the play button if you are in play mode, and then it replays that very same song over and over again up to 16 times. And if you want it more and more, you can push the play button again. But yeah, it's going to replay that same song 16 times. And if we want it to stop, we just push stop. So then we also have the ability to not only play one and the same song over and over again, we also have the ability to play the entire side of the cassette over and over again. So if we want that, you just push you push fast forward and rewind at the same time, which is a little bit difficult to do sometimes. But if we do that, it now replays this side of the cassette up to 16 times. So the counter shows you how many times we've already listened to this side. Now, because this is the first time that we are listening to, it says 1 right here, and it goes all the way up to 16. And the neat thing about this way, or the neat thing about this, is also if it detects a silent portion that is longer than 10 seconds, it fast forwards and skips that silent part until the next track begins. So that's also very neat. And now we also have the scenario, we have a cassette that isn't really at the beginning. So I was listening to it, then I stopped, but I didn't bother rewinding it. So if I want to listen to this cassette right now from the very beginning, but I am just too lazy to do anything, I just want to listen to it. So I can do that by pushing rewind and play at the same time. So now it rewinds the cassette to the beginning, then it fast forwards until the first track starts, and then it starts playing this cassette. So that's a nice, neat little feature for those people that are just too lazy to do anything. Just like that. So now let's say we are listening to a cassette, but we want to listen to a specific song on this cassette, but we don't know exactly where that song is. So we have the ability to push the index scan button. So the index scan button always jumps to the beginning of each track, and then it plays 10 seconds of that track. And then it fast forwards to the next track, and so on and so on. So I highly doubt that it's going to work right now, because I don't have those 4 seconds between each song. So it's not going to work right now. Or yeah, it does. But yeah, you have to make sure that there's always those 4 seconds. So you get the idea. Now let's say you have a cassette. I don't think that it's going to work with mine because I don't have that. But let's say you have a cassette. You record it a little bit, but you still have more than half of the cassette left to record something. So now you want to go to the end of the last track, because that's where you want to continue recording something. You know, it would be a pain in the ass to search for the end of the last song and then rewind everything and blah 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 blah. So all that you have to do right now is push blank search. So this way it fast forwards the cassette until it finds at least 1 minute or more than 1 minute of silence, and then it rewinds again to the end of the last track. Then it records 4 seconds of silence, and then it goes into rec pause mode. So I highly doubt that this is going to work right now with this cassette, because I don't even have more than 1 minute of silence, but you get the idea. Now then there could be the chance that you want to re-record something. So you are recording maybe a live session or something like that, and you want to re-record something. So you don't have to push stop and rewind and search for the end of the last track and all that kind of stuff. So if you are in record mode, all you have to do is, wait a second, you have to push rewind if you are in record mode, and this way it rewinds to the beginning or to the end of the last track, and then it goes into rec pause mode. Oh yeah, I'm in play, I'm not in rec mode. Why does it continue to play? It told me in the manual that it... Ah, like this. Yeah, it worked. So, yeah. And then you can start recording. So now I have been talking a lot about those 4 seconds of silence. So you can record 4 seconds of silence by just pushing the record button if you are in record mode. So let's say I have been recording something, now I want to have 4 seconds of silence, so I just push the record mode, so now it records 4 seconds of silence, and now it is in rec pause mode, so now I can start the next track. And now I can continue the recording. But let's say you want to have more than just 4 seconds of silence. Of course, that's also possible. You just have to, if you are in record mode, you just push and hold the record button, and this way it records the silence as long as I hold this button. And if I release it, it goes into rec pause mode again. Of course, you can also record less than 4 seconds of silence. If you push record and if you push it again, it continues with the recording. You can also push the record button and push pause, so this way it goes into rec pause mode. So all in all, very nice, very neat little features that this thing has. So now let's compare this deck with another cassette deck that I used to have. So if you remember correctly, I used to have a Philips cassette deck. It was the Philips FC950, which was also a very great, very excellent cassette deck. And it's not that I got rid of it because I didn't like it. I really liked it because it was also a 3-head cassette deck. But it's just that I like the design and the look of the Kenwood cassette deck a little bit more. And when you look at the technical specs, the Kenwood cassette deck, even though it is almost 10 years older, is still slightly better. First of all, when we look at the speed variation or speed accuracy, the Philips cassette deck used to have a speed variation of less than 0.06%. The Kenwood cassette deck has a speed variation of 0.025%, so that's a lot less. And also when I look at the frequency range, that's also where the Kenwood is a little bit better. So the lowest frequency on all 3 different types of cassettes is 35 Hertz on the Philips and 20 Hertz on the Kenwood cassette deck. So that's 15 Hertz lower, which is good. And when it comes to the highest frequency, when it comes to type 1 and type 2 cassettes, the highest frequency on the Kenwood is always 1000 Hertz higher than on the Philips cassette deck. So let's say on the Philips it's 17,000 Hertz for type 1 and 18,000 on the Kenwood. And if it's type 2 cassettes, it might be 18,000 Hertz on the Philips cassette deck, but 19,000 on the Kenwood. And if it comes to type 4 metal tapes, well, the highest frequency is always the same on both. It's, I believe, 22,000 kilohertz. No, 22,000 Hertz, sorry. So yeah, the Kenwood is slightly better. So what else are the difference between the 880 and the 1100 cassette deck, other than the fact that it's a 3 tape head cassette deck and you have some kind of a calibration mode for bias and rec level? The 1100 also has a dual capstan, which means it not only does it has one capstan motor, but it has 2, and also of course 2 pinch rollers. So yeah, the 1100 is a little bit better, but I prefer keeping my 880HX because I'm really satisfied with it. So that's it. That's my video for the Kenwood KX 880 cassette deck. I hope you liked it, and I see you in the next totally random video. Bye! Hey, thank you for watching my video. If you are interested in more technical stuff, you can also click right here. This will get you to my playlist of all my mini-disc videos. So I made a lot of videos about my mini-disc collection as well as various different mini-disc devices. Maybe those are things that you find interesting. You can also click right here and this will get you to my Movie Passion playlist. So this is a new series that I started on this channel where I talk about all my favorite movies and why I like them, what I don't like about them. So maybe you will discover some new and interesting movies that way. So thanks for watching and I see you in the next video. Bye.